Hi, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. I have two pieces of fabric. Both of them are upholstery fabric. One of them I'm going to stabilise with just some lightweight fusible batting or palin, and the other one I'm not going to stabilise at all. And this is a project for Mum, really. She's asked for instructions on how to make a tapered bag with boxed corners. So this is what we're going to do today. We'll have it wider at the top than we do at the bottom with a small boxed corner. Hang around and I'll show you how we go about making these two bags, one with palin, one without, and we'll make some handles in this one. Now, rather than just having a really plain bag with nothing exceptional happening in it, I've decided I'm going to have a pocket on the inside of the lining with some piping at the very top edge, and we're going to put a magnetic snap in our bag as well. So what we need here is just a magnetic snap for the inside of our bag. We need some cord to create some piping. And I've got my lining fabric here, which has been cut out at 23 inches by 13 inches, just one long piece. This is an offcut from the lining fabric. To create the pocket, we want two pieces of fabric that are 5 inches by 9 inches. And this is the main fabric. And I have 23 inches by 13 inches for the main. That's just one long piece. Then I've got two strips for the handle, which are 3 inches by 23 inches, so it's just cut off the edge of the fabric. And I've got a little bit of fabric left over. There's about 1.5 inches of fabric here. I'm going to use this for the piping, and of course we need our magnetic snap. Before we start shaping the bag, we'll get our pocket and our handles ready. The handles are easy. Just place your fabric lengthwise, fold it in half and fold the edges in. And then we can stitch down both long edges of the handle fabric. Okay, I have folded the edges in for my handles. We don't need to stitch the raw edges in because they'll be inside the bag. So I've got those clipped together, and I have my 1.5 inch piece of fabric which I'm going to use for the piping. Now at the moment my pocket fabric is 5 inches by 9 inches, and my cord is a little bit longer. It's about 11 inches and my fabric is 10 inches. And all of these pieces will be trimmed back. So the piping fabric, I've folded that in half and pressed it. I'll place my length of cord on the inside of that. So we want to make sure the cord is right at the very edge of the fold, and then we're going to stitch that closed. So the piping's tucked away in there. I'm going to stitch along the folded edge just over about 1/4 inch from the fold, and that'll secure the cord inside the fabric there. Once I've done the stitching on the long edge of both sides of both handles, and I've done this one with the piping, I'm then going to take my pocket piece and place those right side together, but I'll insert the piping once it's finished. I'll insert that into the pocket section and line that up along the raw edge there, and then I'll stitch that straight down. So first of all we'll go and do these, and then we'll do the pocket section. And before I forget, the other thing I've done is put some iron-on palin on the wrong side of the main part of the fabric. So this piece of upholstery fabric was probably a little bit light for me to have. It didn't have enough structure to it, so I've just put a lightweight palin on the wrong side of this. I've got all the pieces ready that I need. I'll make sure that the piping is right up at the folded edge and just stitch that down. There's actually plenty of wiggle room in here. My piping cord is at the top here. I've still got probably almost another 1/4 inch before my stitching line is. If you want to have it go closer, then use your zipper foot so that you can actually go right next to the cord. I'll grab my pocket piece. I'll place both pieces right side together with that piping strip on the inside and line up all of those layers, and we'll stitch right along that long edge. Because I didn't use my zipper foot and I didn't stitch really close to the edge, I've also used just a really narrow cord. You can see that that's quite a long peeper sitting at the top of the pocket there. And if you're happy with that, that's fine. In fact, don't even need to put the cord in here. You can just have that as a decorative contrast at the top of your pocket. So you could easily whip out the cord and just have a nice decorative feature at the top of your pocket. I actually just want to have a little bit of cord peeping out at the very top. So I'm going to put my zipper foot on my machine and go and stitch closer to the edge of the cord. So I've got my really narrow zipper foot on. This will get me a lot closer to the cord. So you can see the difference now with the fabric. It's a lot closer. All you've got peeping out there now is the bit of cord at the top of the pocket. So it's up to you if you want to have a nice flat trim at the top, or if you want to have a narrow little peeper with the cord on there. You can do that either way. There's no right or wrong with these bags that we make. Now what we can do is close up the pocket. We're going to stitch down the short edge on both sides. Along the long edge of the pocket here, we're going to stitch from the outside edge in on both sides, and we'll leave an opening of a couple of inches, and we'll do that so that we can turn the pocket through. Double stitch over the section where the cord is, because we don't want that to pop through later. I'm just using 1/4 of an inch seam allowance here. Then we'll take our handles and we are going to stitch straight down the long edges on both sides. When you've finished the long edge of both your handle pieces, rather than turning your work around and starting at the same end and coming back, if you go back to the beginning of your handle and stitch on the opposite side, you're going to have less twist in your handles. You can see how the handle is already starting to curl. If you come down one side and then come back up the other side, it's more likely to curl more than if you start back up at the side that you originally started at. You can see that handle is already looking nice and straight. We've finished our handles. We'll take the pocket piece and I'm just going to trim off the edge here, and we can turn the pocket the right way around. So there's our little bit of piping at the top of the pocket, and it'll just add a little bit of interest to the inside of your bag and make it look a little less bland just by having that little feature at the top. So you'll actually see that there's a pocket there. We'll set that aside. Now we'll take our lining piece. It doesn't matter which piece of fabric you take as long as you can mark the fabric. I'm going to turn this the wrong way around, and we're now going to shape the bag so that it's nicely tapered, and we're just going to fold that in half and we'll have the fold at the bottom. The angle that you want on your bag is completely up to you, as is the amount of boxing that you want at the bottom of your bag as well. I want to have a base of about 2 inches overall at the bottom, so that means I'm going to have 1 inch boxed corners, and the taper on the bag, if I take this piece of fabric and I angle that across there, I can determine whether I want my fabric to come from here all the way down here, or if I want to have an even sharper angle. But you have to do this on both sides, which means that I'll pretty much have a vase. I don't want as much as that. I only want a very slight taper from here down to here, which will give me about the same on the other side. And that measures around about 2 inches. I'm using a fade out or washout pen here. The first line I'm going to mark is what I want for my boxing of the corners. From the folded edge at the bottom, I'm going to mark a line 1 inch up from the bottom. And this is going to be the allowance for my boxed corners. So if you can imagine this folded up 1 inch, this will be the overall height of my bag. I'm going to mark 2 inches in from the side edge, and I'll just mark an intersecting point along here. So I've got 1 inch from the bottom, 2 inches from the side. I'll repeat that for the other side. So this point here is where my diagonal line is going to come through. I'll bring my ruler down through that intersection and let it continue on down to the bottom. And then I'm just going to mark a line all the way down, and I'll repeat that for the other side. So what we've got here is our diagonal line drawn all the way down to the bottom, and this intersecting point is 2 inches in from the outside edge on both sides. And we've got our boxed corner section 1 inch up from the fold of the fabric. Now I've just in pencil, I've just marked in a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Seam allowance is completely up to you, but I've just drawn that in just so that you can see how this is going to look. To mark in your boxed corners, you need to follow the angle of this outside line that we've drawn. Because we're having a 1 inch boxed corner, line up that first line you've drawn and place a mark 1 inch away from that line, like that there. And we'll do that on this side as well. And this is our cutting line for our fabric. And the dotted line here is our stitching line, because I'm going to make this a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now this is a sew line erasable pen. It's a duo, and this is the marker that comes with it, so you can actually erase your lines. You can't redraw over them until it's dry though. So that's the shape of our bag. Now I can place this over the top of my main fabric. Doesn't matter which way you have it, whether you have it right side up or right side together. We just want the fold at the bottom here and this one lined up on the fold as well. Place the two pieces on top of each other and we'll pin that together so that it doesn't shift whilst we're cutting it. And then we can cut out all the layers. We'll cut out the diagonal in 1 inch and then diagonally down. Okay, we have both bag pieces ready to cut out. And you know, there's not much left to do with this bag now. First of all, we're going to put our pocket on one side of our lining fabric. You can see how this looks now. This is your pattern for your bag. Fold your fabric in half to find the centre. Find the centre of your pocket. Line that up along the centre there. And my pocket's 2 inches from the top edge. We haven't closed up the opening on our pocket yet. We'll do that as we stitch this pocket in place. So we're going to start on the edge here. We're going to do a back stitch and we're going to secure that really well right on the very edge there. Come down, stitch straight across the bottom, closing up the opening, and then come up to the top again, and you're going to stitch really well along the top edge here as well. Then when we've done that, we're going to place right sides together, and you can clip it in place if you like, and we're going to stitch with a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way down the long diagonal edge. Now we're going to stitch all the way down on one side, but on the other side we're going to leave an opening because we're going to have our opening for turning the bag through on one of the side edges. So we'll leave an opening of about 3 inches on the one side. You'll do a back stitch at the top and the bottom, back stitch at the top and bottom here, and do the long edge over here. Grab your main fabric, place that right side together, and we're going to stitch with a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way down on both long edges just there. But before we do that, we're also going to prepare the handles for the bag. We'll find the centre of the bag, fold that in half, and just mark the centre. So I've marked that with a pin, and then you can position the handle anywhere along the top of the bag. We've got quite a good length handle here, and I think that it's probably a little bit too long. Because it's only going to be a small bag, I'm going to trim the handle down a bit. I've trimmed my handles down to 18 inches, and what I want to do is position my handle on either side of the pin, and I'm going to position the handle 2 inches from the centre and align the handle up beside that 2 inch mark. So there's my pin just there, and then I've got 2 inches there, and the edge of my handle will start at the 2-inch line. Again, this is personal choice. If you want to have your handles wider apart, you can. If you need to have them closer together, especially if your handles are too short, then you can do that as well. And that's a pretty good distance all over. And I'll repeat that for the other side. If you want to put a label on your bag, now is a good time as well. So let's go and do these things. We're going to take this to the machine. We're going to stitch the handles down on both sides of the bag. Then we are going to sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance down both long edges. We're going to sew the pocket down on both short edges and across the bottom, remembering to reinforce at the top here. And when we've done that, then we can sew the long edges on the lining, leaving an opening on one side. Okay, first up is the pocket. Once the pocket's ready, you can place the right sides together. I'll start at the top edge here, stitch down to the pin, and do the same from this pin down to the bottom, remembering to backstitch at the beginning and the end. And I'm doing a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I think it would help if I had thread in my bobbin. Let's try that again. I'll grab the main fabric and stitch the handles down. And then place right sides together again, and we'll sew along the long edges. Now, there are a couple of things I need to do before I put the bag together. I want to put in one of my nicer Christine Made It tags. So what I've done here is I found the center, which is just there. I've come down 2 3/4 inches from the top, and that's where I'm going to put the little metal washer on the inside of the bag. So I place the washer in the center there. So that little line there is the position of the holes that I need for the little prongs to go through for my tag. I only need to do this on the one side of my bag, and this is already stabilized, so I don't need to put anything more behind it. I'm going to go in at the bottom here, come up at the top of the line with my seam ripper. That way I'm not going to tear the rest of my fabric, and just poke a hole. Repeat that on this side. So I've got a hole in my fabric without actually tearing the rest of my bag. And I'll place the washer over the prongs and open that out. I want to put the magnetic snaps on the inside of my bag. I've marked the center, and I've come down 1 1/2 inches from the top edge, remembering that we're going to have about a 1/2 inch seam allowance at the top there, and we need to mark this on both sides of the bag. And don't forget, our pocket is 2 inches from the top as well, so you want to make sure that your magnetic snap sits above the area where your pocket is. You can put your pocket down a little bit lower if you want to. Line up the washer and make a mark on both sides of the bag. This being lining, I'm not going to trust the fabric to be strong enough on its own. Even when it has a washer on there, I just feel as though it needs a little bit more stability. So I've got just a piece of fabric here, which I'm going to put behind it. It's just slightly larger than the washer. So I'll place that over the top there. I'm going to have to remark my fabric. I'm doing this because I don't want to have to stabilize my lining fabric. It's an unnecessary waste of material and time. So I mark that 1 1/2 inches again. And I'll do the same with my seam ripper. I'm going to come in at the bottom, come out at the top through all of those layers, pierce a hole, and repeat for the other side. Then take one of your magnetic sides and poke that through the hole that you've just created, and place your washer over the top and open your prongs, and repeat for the other side. Now we can box our corners. where the fold is in your fabric, you can just make a mark there at both edges, just so that it helps you line up the center. Pinch your fabric out, and that little line there, you can line that up on that seam that you've got just there. I'm going to press my seams open on this bag. It's not something I usually do, but because I've got so much padding with the pallin here, I'm going to have my seams pressed open, and I'll stitch that down along there, and I'll do the same on this side. Line up that mark I've just made, open my seams, which of course will mean I have to open the seams on my lining as well. And you can also press your seams open. You can take that to the iron and press it. Grab your lining, and we'll do the same thing. We've got the fold just there. Match up the fold of your fabric with the seam line and press your seams open. And we'll take this to the machine and we'll stitch 1/2 inch on both sides and on the main fabric as well. And just go and press the side seams open. Okay, let's finish up this bag. Place your handles inside, take your lining and turn that the right way out, and just make sure the pocket's on the correct side. I'm going to place the pocket on the side opposite to where my metal tag is, and with these seams open I'm going to line those up just along the edge there, clip it together and clip it together all the way around the bag. Okay, that's clipped together all the way around the top. We are going to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around the very top. When we get to the position where the handles are, I'm going to triple stitch over those. Then we'll turn the bag the right way around, poke out all the edges, and then we can top stitch and finish this baby up. Okay, let's find the opening and turn this the right way around. Now we're ready to top stitch. Roll the lining edge of the fabric toward the inside so that you see the outer edge of the fabric just peeking up at the top, and then we'll go and top stitch all the way. And once that's done, take the opening here and just pinch the edges together, and we'll sew that closed. Okay, there's the finished product of both of the bags. These are both made using upholstery fabric. One was a lighter weight than the other. This one's got a much more heavy feel to it, so I didn't bother to put any stabilizer in this. I also haven't put a pocket in there, and I didn't put the little magnetic snap on there either. And this one's just got really short handles as opposed to this one with the longer handles. I didn't quite have enough fabric to make longer handles, but it's still quite a cute little bag. And this one here, of course, has a magnetic clasp and the pocket with that little bit of piping peeping through just here. So it just adds a nice little bit of contrast, helps you to actually see that the pocket is there as well. So both bags look very different to one another. Shorter handle, longer handle, couple of extra features inside this floral bag as well, with that piping and the magnetic clasp and also the pocket. They both probably only take about an hour or so to do, so you can make up these as really nice little quick gifts. You can make these up in the morning and give them away in the afternoon. I think this is cute, so I'm going to put this one in the shop and sell it for, I'll price it for $45. It seems to be what I do for most of my lined bags at the moment. So yeah, I think I'll price this one at $45 in the shop. I'll see how I go. I might even make up a batch of them. I'll see how this one goes though. I'll try and get a feel for what the customers think about this particular bag. It is very cute though. And since Mother's Day is coming up and Mum's favourite colour is blue, happy Mother's Day, Mum. I hope you've enjoyed this video and I shall catch you next time. Bye for now.